Disclaimers, an online presentation of the FEC's Information Division. This presentation provides a brief overview of the disclaimer requirements for political advertising. For additional information, please visit our website at www.fec.gov. The Federal Election Campaign Act requires that any public communication made by a political committee display a disclaimer that identifies who paid for the message and, where applicable, whether it was authorized by a candidate. The disclaimer must be presented in a clear and conspicuous manner. Public communications include those made by broadcast, cable or satellite, newspaper, magazine, outdoor advertising facility, mass mailing or telephone bank to the general public, or any other form of general public political advertising. The term general public political advertising does not include communications made over the internet, except for communications placed for a fee on another person's website, digital device, application, or advertising platform. The communications sponsor and the medium used will determine the content and the appearance of the disclaimer. An ad paid for by a candidate's own campaign need only indicate who paid for it. For example, the disclaimer on this print ad for Jackie Henson's campaign simply says, "Paid for by people for Henson." If an ad is paid for by someone other than the candidate's own campaign, the disclaimer must indicate not only who paid for the message, but also whether the candidate authorized it. For example, the disclaimer on this print ad from the 1975 PAC states that it was authorized by Meg Archer-Smith's campaign. By contrast, the disclaimer on ads not authorized by a candidate's campaign must indicate that fact and must provide the sponsor's permanent street address, telephone number, or website address. FEC regulations include several media-specific requirements designed primarily to ensure that disclaimers are clear and conspicuous. These include print, television, radio, and internet. In printed communications, the disclaimer must be contained within a printed box set apart from the contents of the communication. The font size of the disclaimer must be of sufficient size to be clearly readable by the recipient of the communication, and the print must have a reasonable degree of color contrast between the background and the printed statement. For printed material measuring no more than 24 inches by 36 inches, black text in 12-point font on a white background is one way to satisfy this requirement. Disclaimers on radio communications must include additional language. The so-called stand by your ad provision requires the ad to identify the person responsible for the message. For ads authorized by a candidate's campaign, candidates must deliver an audio statement identifying themselves and stating that they approved of the communication. For example, "My name is John Doe, I'm running for U.S. Senate, and I approve this message." A radio communication that is not authorized by a candidate or the candidate's authorized committee or their agents must include an audio statement from a representative of the political committee, corporation, labor organization, individual or group paying for the communication, indicating that it is responsible for the content of this advertising. This is in addition to the statements identifying who paid for the communication and that it is not authorized by a candidate or candidates committee. TV disclaimer regulations require both authorized and unauthorized communications to contain a clearly readable written disclaimer that appears at the end of the communication for a period of at least 4 seconds with a reasonable degree of color contrast between the background and the disclaimer statement. The written statement must occupy at least 4% of the vertical picture height. As with radio, sponsors must identify themselves as being responsible for the content of their TV ads. If the ad is not authorized by a candidate's campaign, the sponsor may deliver the statement while appearing full screen or by voiceover. For ads authorized by a candidate's campaign, the candidate must deliver the statement either full screen or through a voiceover accompanied by an image of the candidate that occupies at least 80% of the vertical screen height.
That's why I'm running to be your representative in Congress. Don't forget to vote. I am Jackie Henson, a candidate for the House of Representatives, and I approve this advertisement.
Internet public communications that include text or graphic components must include a written disclaimer that can be viewed without taking any action. The text of the disclaimer must be large enough to be clearly readable by the recipient of the communication. Disclaimer text that is at least as large as the majority of other text in the communication satisfies this requirement. The disclaimer must also be displayed with a reasonable degree of color contrast between the background and the disclaimer's text. A disclaimer satisfies this requirement if it is displayed in black text on a white background, or if the degree of color contrast is no less than the color contrast between the background and the largest text used in the communication. Remember, disclaimers are only required for communications placed for a fee on another person's website, digital device, application, or advertising platform. For Internet public communications that contain only audio, no video, graphic, or text components, the disclaimer must be included within the audio component so that a recipient need not take any additional action beyond listening to the advertisement to obtain the disclaimer information. The Internet disclaimer provisions do not impose the stand by your ad requirements applicable to radio and television advertisements.
We'll get back to your Internet music station shortly. This November, there's only one candidate you should vote for. Dakota Raven West is the candidate for you. Dakota is good on jobs, the economy, and education. Vote for Dakota this November. Paid for by Dakota Raven West for Senate. Now back to your radio stream.
For Internet public communications in which the disclaimer is displayed within a video, the disclaimer must be visible for at least 4 seconds and appear without the recipient taking any action. Here again, the Internet disclaimer provisions do not impose the stand by your ad requirements applicable to radio and television advertisements.
Benjamin Grayford has more endorsements than any other candidate running in the 61st Congressional District. Clearly, he is the best candidate for the job. It's time to send Benjamin to Congress.
When a full disclaimer cannot be provided, or would occupy more than 25% of the communication due to character or space constraints intrinsic to the advertising product or medium, an adapted disclaimer may be used. As shown in this example, the adapted disclaimer identifies who paid for the message and is accompanied by an indicator and mechanism that links to the full disclaimer. FEC regulations identify certain exceptions to the disclaimer requirements. For instance, pens, bumper stickers, campaign buttons, and similar small items which cannot be conveniently printed do not require a disclaimer. Items such as water towers, skywriting, and wearing apparel do not require disclaimers since their display is not practicable. Lastly, items of minimal value that do not contain a political message and are used for administrative purposes such as checks and receipts do not require a disclaimer. That concludes our brief overview of the federal campaign finance law's disclaimer requirements. The Federal Election Commission is committed to encouraging compliance with the federal campaign finance laws. In addition to the information we provide on our website, we maintain a toll-free information line you can call for help. We respond promptly to questions sent by email, and we conduct conferences throughout the country, host webinars on a variety of topics, and post e-learning videos, like this one, on our website and YouTube channel. We encourage you to make use of these resources and look forward to serving you.